someone you likely know from his famous Lumascapes, and maybe even know from his often viral music video parodies. Terence Khawaja is CEO and founder of Luma Partners, and he's here today to share insights into how key industry trends like AI, retail media, and the evolving ad tech will shape the future of out-of-home. So please join me in welcoming Terry to the stage.
Thank you, Anna. Good afternoon, everybody. So, okay, navigating the new media landscape, what's next for out-of-home? That sounds interesting. But let me start by addressing probably the question that's on many of your minds right now, which is, why are you listening to an investment banker? I mean, after all, we don't have the best reputations. If you were to Google investment bankers, yeah, it turns out, you know, this is kind of what people think. Those are actual search results. So whatever you think of your day job, I have to wake up every morning knowing this is kind of what people think. However, all is not lost. It turns out, you know, we advise companies, usually big companies, when they buy smaller, innovative growth companies, and we've done a lot of that. Over the last 15 years, we've done over $26 billion in transactions, or exits as we call them, on behalf of the tech entrepreneurs, largely in the digital space. And you would find these to be in the realm of programmatic and CTV, commerce media, data, and lately AI. And so it's all those things talked about at the other conferences and at this conference. But importantly, I think the reason why these are important is because that tends to be where innovation gets driven, right? Innovation occurs at the startup companies, and then when bigger companies acquire those capabilities and bring those technologies to the greater scale that they have with their customers, that's when you see manifestation of trends. That's when you get to see those kind of growth curves, and I think that's what's missing and needed in out-of-home. And I'm a little frustrated because I love out-of-home. It's unique as a format. You know this well, and if you've been listening today, you've heard all the attributes. It captures people's attention. It is inescapable, right? You can't click away. It's impactful, and it's an amazing canvas for creativity. In fact, it's ironic that at Cannes Lion, this fancy, you know, festival in the south of France, probably the leading conference in all of advertising, where all the digital companies come to discuss trends and network and do deals. What is the advertising format of choice to get to those influencers? It's all out-of-home on the Palais and along the Croisette. So it's a little bit ironic. So 4 years ago, in the midst of the pandemic, Anna asked me to address this conference. And in it, I kind of lambasted the conference in the sense that it was out of this frustration that I felt about the potential for out-of-home and yet sort of the lack of seized opportunity. If you listened to Nick Bryan this morning, I share his sort of both enthusiasm for the sector and as well frustration in that it feels like still an unseized opportunity. My title was Out-of-Home's Nearly Missed Opportunity because of the sort of mindset towards positioning out-of-home, and I want to talk about that. So in this presentation 4 years ago, you know, I talked about things like the challenge growth and noted that, you know, of course, across the last 20 years, the compound annual growth rate of revenues in out-of-home advertising is 2%. 2%, that sounds like a milk category, not a growth rate of a media channel. I pointed out the operational hurdles around tech fragmentation, measurement, and operating silos. And back then, we were in very early days of digital adoption. It was only 7%, you know, programmatic. And really all the innovation around the programmatic and digital ecosystem was happening again at these tech startups. And I pointed out that in digital, in the other channels of digital where we had done a tremendous amount of M&A, those were it was only when you saw programmatic adoption scaling and getting that technology in the hands of larger companies that could bring it to a broader market was when you got to see the inflection curves on growth and see it explode. And of course it did in those in the digital category. So pointing out those factors, and yeah, some things never change, and some things do. So if we were to look at where growth lies, it isn't in traditional out-of-home. That's pretty much flat. Digital, fortunately, is growing much faster at 11% domestically, and yet 11%, whilst better than flat, still pales in comparison to the growth rates of the other digital channels. And so there's still more opportunity to be seized. And I think, why has it lagged? One of the things we talked about 4 years ago, and I think still persists to some degree, is we've got, lack of operational integration like you have in the other digital channels. It's still perceived as a top of funnel kind of branding ad solution as opposed to targeting. And the technology fragmentation hasn't quite fit together as well as other digital channels. Now, in many ways, some of these elements are a perception problem, right? Out-of-home is perceived as this sort of more older school digital channel, and I like some of the comments I heard earlier that it's not even a channel; it's well beyond that. But it feels glass half empty-ish, and I think that can be changed. Yes. The good news about out-of-home and digital out-of-home is that there are barriers to entry, right? It does feel like it's more protected, whether it's the infrastructure layer, the technology layer. Digital out-of-home is not as susceptible to the mass competition that you see in other digital channels, so that's super helpful. However, defense isn't going to get you to the promised land, right? Just saying you've got more protection isn't what's going to fix things and enable growth. It is, I believe, this sector addressing some of those challenges pointed out 4 years ago, making progress on integrations with other digital channels. We'll talk about, it's really programmatic that drives that. Yes, we've, thanks to the work of the OAAA, DPAA, IAB, all of these organizations are helping with standardization, which greases the skids in terms of ad spend. And then growth, right? Programmatic. This has been the driver of these other digital channels, and I think one that is going to be self-evident that is necessary for out-of-home to capture that kind of uptick in ad spend. So again, if we just take digital out-of-home, this is very much driven by programmatic. 42% growth in programmatic off a relatively small base, right? I mean, this is a little bit about law of large numbers, and that's great, and because what programmatic enables is that when this inventory is bidded, it has what is described in the programmatic digital world as bid density. And when you have bid density, you get liquidity. And liquidity accrues to the benefit of the ecosystem in terms of higher yields and more scale. It enables folks like the people that were up here earlier in agencies not to think of out-of-home as a bucket, a silo, but rather as integrated across all of their digital buys. In fact, now we're sort of approaching 30%, or approximately, in the US in terms of percentage of digital out-of-home spend, and that is critical to get to the kind of stage necessary, again, for this premise of liquidity in the marketplace. You could think of it in phases. I borrowed this from our book Cotter, who's basically shows that you depending on the channel, there are different stages of programmatic adoption, and we've seen programmatic and mobile and display sort of take off in terms of scale because it's got a huge percentage of programmatic. We're never going to quite get to those levels given the fact that there is static inventory that will always persist, but migrating to a later stage, will bring that kind of liquidity to the marketplace that'll enable inflected growth. And we're seeing that now in audio, also a channel with relatively small spend, and it's starting to take off because they're enabling this programmatic spend. The other thing is, whilst out-of-home does cater to smaller and local advertisers, being able to do that with automation is really the name of the game. All of the major digital giants, Google and Amazon and Facebook, Meta, all have one thing in common. They have millions of small advertisers. And that brings operating leverage, in particular, if you have programmatic capabilities that have that sort of bid density, then you get a tremendous amount of operating leverage associated with having a lot of small advertisers. And mark my words, these small advertisers that you covet and you've historically had, that moat we're talking about, CTV is going after them, all right? Other forms of digital advertising are going after those customers because of the inherent operating leverage. You do, unlike digital, you do not have a lot of the major holdbacks, the major issues associated with digital around fraud, brand safety, privacy, viewability, kind of largely non-existent. Again, the defensive story of out-of-home is pretty damn good. We just need to work on the offensive story. And in digital, there's these three sort of major forces taking place right now. The sort of inclination to drive towards omni-channel, the proliferation of AI and automation, and the shift to performance. You've heard a lot today about outcomes, and I think that's going to play, it's playing a major role across digital and will do so in out-of-home as well. And the way you know that these are the trends, not just because they're discussed at conferences, but also you get to see investment and deal activity where large corporates are setting themselves up to take advantage of these trends by making transactions that enable them with the capabilities necessary to proliferate these trends. And they're happening across all the digital channels: CTV, mobile, commerce, display, social. And so it's this is sort of omni, that all of these issues are applied to all of these digital channels. And you know it from, if you attend any of these major advertising conferences, these tend to be the issues, the trends and the subsectors and channels that get all the dialogue, that get all the buzz that everyone's talking about in terms of where innovation is. And my message to the out-of-home community is, if you can't beat them, join them. Like it's like, get in on the game. These are your issues. So great, you got the defensive stuff. Seize the offense. When there's discussion of omni-channel, out-of-home may be perceived as siloed, as separate by, but digital out-of-home, when it's bidded, particularly programmatic, can be part of those omni-channel buys. In fact, a proper way to show this diagram perhaps would be more Venn-like, with overlapping circles because of the integrations between out-of-home and CTV, and out-of-home and social, out-of-home and mobile, out-of-home and display, et cetera. And again, evidence in terms of investment and acquisitions where major corporates are putting up big dollars to enable themselves of these trends. They're taking notice of digital out-of-home and data to position themselves for those trends. And AI is the big daddy. I mean, we talk a lot about trends, and we like to think that we call balls and strikes well. That is to say, when not every, marketing loves the shiny new object, and it gets talked about at conferences, and everyone sort of seizes on every new trend. But the reality is, not all trends are created equal. Like when Web3 was coming out, and everyone was talking about NFTs and metaverse, it's like, come on, nonsense. You got to call balls and strikes, and it was, as it relates to AI is perfectly suited for digital advertising or advertising, and vice versa. Advertising is perfectly suited for AI. Think about it: large spend, massive data pools, which are the sort of input to the models, and a perfect spectrum of outcomes, either the consumer converted or they did not. And so it's perfectly suited. We think of the applications pursuant to a hierarchy. Think of like Maslow, right? You've got leveling from low disruption up to significant disruption. So at the base layer, you've got software. This is, AI represents software that optimizes existing tasks primarily to drive efficiency, more efficient audience data, more efficient measurement, more efficient workflow, more efficient media buying. Next layer up is content, ad creative. So this is now into the realm of generative AI and communication in the context of chat. Obviously, what we're trying to do is we're trying to migrate that user through to a purchase, down the purchase funnel, and automated chat does a very effective job of that. So this is really software that optimizes existing tasks, yes, for efficiency, but more importantly for effectiveness, and that it has a huge delta in terms of whether the ad worked or not. Next level up is internet navigation itself. This is now, instead of this being an existing task, this is a new task. So the new consumer interface with LLMs disrupts search. In fact, it potentially disrupts web navigation. Why do you need, there are no 10 blue links anymore, there's just answers. And you don't need to send somebody to a website. Maybe the website or the publisher can just publish directly to the LLM on a B2B basis. But massive implications here, and I would suggest that have lots of confidence that these big LLMs will migrate to an ad-supported or commerce-related supported model, since their subscriptions are simply not going to pay for all the compute spend they need to make. And then the final category, and I put this in the realm of a Donald Rumsfeld unknown unknowns, is who knows? New tasks we haven't thought of yet. This is extremely powerful software that has capabilities that we probably at this gestation, 3 years into the generative AI revolution, we probably haven't figured out what those all are yet. And in out-of-home, and by the way, these tends to come in two ways. Either the software assists humans in making these decisions, or the more advanced version is agents, where the software, in fact, makes decisions by itself with governance parameters, obviously, but you get more and more operating leverage when you go to the full automation. That will take time, but it's certainly coming. And where we see the application for digital out-of-home is advanced audience and contextual, predictive planning, optimization and yield management, attribution. There are any number of existing tasks that can be improved with the application of AI software. In fact, it unlocks the dynamic creative opportunities where, let's say, the AI enables the ad to know what car you're driving or the context of the weather or where you are, et cetera. So there's lots of opportunities for AI's technology application to out-of-home. Commerce media. You've heard a lot about commerce media. It's a huge growth sector, and there's no reason why out-of-home shouldn't embrace and be part of the commerce media story. We've noted that commerce media is both a channel and a layer. So yes, you've got retail media, and they have their media properties, but the data, the first-party data from that very, very strong purchase intent can be applied across other categories, including digital out-of-home. In fact, out-of-home has a unique opportunity to potentially be at that nexus of applying, connecting online and offline through the in-store data collected from out-of-home activations to then propagate to other channels. So there's even a data capability here that out-of-home may uniquely have relative to these other channels. Let alone the emerging tech. We've seen, you've seen demonstrations of lots of cool stuff around QR codes, AR, voice activation, and again, the category of unknown unknowns, where, who knows, we're going to be seeing all kinds of new things and potential going forward. So, takeaways. Great. Thanks, Terry. Lots of deals over there in digital. Starting to see some activity here in digital out-of-home. What do we do to enhance the value of out-of-home? More digital, right? More digital is better. More programmatic, even within digital. Integrate to omni-channel, be part of those media buys. And again, these are related to one another, so the more programmatic, the more enabled you are. Embrace these digital trends, and more importantly, propagate out-of-home as part of digital. So, turns out that these trends in the digital ecosystem actually have the capability to migrate these what were challenges into opportunities. And so I think the dialogue around the integration of how out-of-home solutions can be part of these digital trends is great to talk about at a conference like this, but let's make sure it gets propagated to all of the conferences in advertising, so that when you sit on a panel at the ANA or CES or Cannes Lion or Possible, don't sit on an out-of-home panel. Sit on a panel about retail media or CTV or AI and bring the out-of-home perspective. Think of it less, let's sell it less as a channel. In fact, let's sell it, right? So back to this sort of perception of the glass half empty, what I'd like to see is people in this industry taking advantage of the tremendous opportunity, both defense that you've got in this channel, but also the opportunity to play offense, get off the heels of your feet, get on the balls of your feet, and maybe think about the glass as mostly full and very much digital. Thank you.